What's up everyone, John from ARTV. Today we have a very special video. It's not a year-end countdown, it's not a traditional album review, but of course you saw the title of this video, and we're going to be looking at reasons why 2016 just wasn't that exciting of a year. In fact, it was very underwhelming and weak as a whole. But what contributed to this? Why did these things happen? And why did we have to have the year that we did? Well, we didn't have to have that year, of course, but there were a lot of contributing factors that said we did. Now, obviously, there were a lot of great albums, mixtapes, EPs, singles that came out in this year, and you will see in more of my year-end countdown videos as you watch those that there were a lot of great things to appreciate about this year. But looking to 2017, there's some trends that I hope we break, some tropes that I hope we can get away from, out of those little slumps that we've fallen into, and just as music listeners, music fans, and obviously the artists and bands themselves. So, of course, these are just my personal opinions and suggestions as to what's going on. Leave yours in the comment section down below. Let's go ahead and kick this off. It seemed like there was an overall lack of effort whenever it came to making music from the bands, the producers, the artists in 2016. It was a very rough year because everything kind of felt homogenous. It all blended together and nothing really stood out. It's like trying to make a smoothie, but you've only got one ingredient. It was this kind of washed up hip-hop flavored everything, and just occasionally throw in some kind of trap beats, which obviously draw from hip-hop culture as well, and the electronics maybe on top of that to kind of give it a club feel, and then this kind of sleek elegance with a kind of fake and faux accent on it that really tried to highlight it being edgy. And then you've got 2016 in a nutshell. There were so many songs that tried so hard to make themselves stand out, even in what's considered the alternative and indie scene this year, with acts like Troye Sivan or Halsey or 21 Pilots. I just feel like music kind of got into this rut. Obviously, some of those artists released really great songs, and they kind of separated themselves a little bit, but at the same time, as you listen to it more and more, there was not an emphasis on diversity. I mean, just look at the Billboard Hot 100. We had multiple songs ruling for over 10 weeks, like One Dance by Drake, that I swear to God, if I hear that again, I'll probably throw a stereo out a window. And then, of course, Closer by the Chainsmokers and Halsey. And if you look at something that everything had in common, it was just kind of a monotonous, repetitive flow to really all of the songs that really seemed to take off. And even in the alternative and rock, and I'm not going to say so much the metal world because they had a pretty decent year from what I can understand, it just seemed like a lot of genres weren't putting out anything that was that overwhelmingly good. You've heard people say that they're a slave to the trends. Well, I feel like that's what listeners were in 2016 to what Spotify and Apple Music fed them through their curation, their playlists that they promoted, and that sort of thing. And everything that got pushed to the forefront, people just seem to listen to it. If you look at the plays, even on well-established artists that would make a comeback or something like that, look at how little attention the John Mayer single would get compared to, I don't know, the Justin Timberlake comeback, because that's something that's kind of poppy right now. Very popular with that style, just a big, sweeping, danceable feel, and that's always in. Obviously, I'm not going to say that that necessarily catered more than one other song did, but you look at certain people who have found a ton of success in the past, and they obviously get swept under the rug. And you can honestly say, John, that's just the changing of the seasons. That artist has had his time. Now it's time for somebody new. Well, I also feel like that was something we got a ton of, was a bunch of new artists this year. People that I had never really heard of in the past. People from Phoebe Ryan all the way to obviously Halsey being a very new artist that made her way on to Zara Larsson. And I don't know, there were a ton of names that were popping up. I didn't know who they were. Who is 21 Savage? Who are all of these other rappers that are coming up? Young M.A., all these people, and I'm like looking through the Billboard Hot 100 and I'm like, okay, who? I need to get on Wikipedia and look all these people up. As much as we probably hate to admit it to ourselves, a lot of our favorite bands and artists dropped very disappointing albums in 2016. Something that I just found myself saying meh Two, so many times I would listen to these albums and they weren't bad per se, but they didn't move me in any way. And then they wonder why people aren't buying their albums necessarily. And it's just like, well, you're putting out maybe like 3 singles that are pretty solid, pretty enjoyable tracks, have a big hook and grab to them. But then you listen through the rest of the album, maybe people sample it on Spotify or Apple Music or their favorite streaming service or even on YouTube. And they're like, well, the rest of this pretty much just seems to be filler, kind of in the same vein of what you were doing before, except less interesting. And that's what I can say for so many of these projects that I listened through in 2016. I mean, look at Tovlo, A Day to Remember, so many others that really seem to be full of potential, but then could not cash that check that they wrote to start off with. This year showed us that record labels are completely strapped for cash these days. Obviously, the music industry is not what it used to be, and people are sacrificing quality for quantity more than ever. Songs don't last as long as they used to on the charts. People forget about things because we live in this ADHD generation. And I'm not going to say that that's all to blame for 2016, but it's definitely a theory that's been floating around in my head as to why these songs just don't click like they used to. It's because we want something for a moment, for the background of a Snapchat, for an Instagram story or an Instagram post or something you share on Facebook. You want something that lasts 15 seconds in somebody's mind. But back in the day, I feel like there was more of an emphasis on the actual music itself. And obviously there were tons of great projects that did emphasize that. I just feel like they kind of got swept under the rug this year. And obviously I feel like we didn't get as many albums this year as well. That's another huge emphasis for me because I feel like there were so many people that were maybe supposed to put something out in 2016 and didn't, or else they did drop it and it felt rushed, like they were just forced to put something out, or they just didn't really care that much and they felt like the fans wouldn't either, so they just kind of phoned it in. And I feel like that all kind of contributed to the downward spiral of this year, or I should say why 2016 never really started off great in the first place, never really got its footing, and never really went anywhere. I found myself saying, and kind of like shrugging my shoulders, sighing, feeling impatient while listening through albums and even singles, the charts, even in the alternative world as well. I felt like stuff just tried a little bit too hard to cater to a certain demographic. I mean, just listen through an Alt Nation Top 18 countdown and you'll see how similar and samey everything tries to be. It feels like if one person or band tries this little gimmick, or they try a little electronic flair or a synthy thing, it feels like everybody else hops on that and tries to be danceable. And I feel like that all kind of started with Walk the Moon, and then now everybody's trying to do it, but in a much worse way, because I obviously love Walk the Moon and thought they had some fantastic hit songs. But 2016 overall, it just did not stack up well compared to recent years, and I'm really looking forward to 2017, begging that we're going to get something a whole lot better. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing my opinions and theories today. Let me know with a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, because friends don't let friends go unsubscribed. You can check out a year-end playlist right here, or a recent review that I did by clicking these little links right here. You can find me on social media, linked in the description down below. And other than that, I will see you guys very soon right here on ARTV.